Hey guys, welcome to today's episode of the Girl Get Visible podcast. Today we have a really special guest, and it's funny because she's been on episode 100, actually helped me out with actual episode 100, interviewing me. And so now I have Kishshana Palmer back here today to talk about her new upcoming book or just released book, right? Her new just released book, and I'm going to be interviewing her about all of her expertise. So if you want to get a little touch, go back to episode 100 and you can hear us chit chat there. And then when you're ready to dive in and get more all about Kishshana, then come back to this episode. So Kishshana just released her new book, Busy is a 4-letter word. And when I saw that she was working on this book, I was like, I have got to have you on. We've actually been trying this for months. So I'm so excited that we finally made it here because I know how important this is for everyone, right? Not even just going to say entrepreneurs, but entrepreneurs, corporate girlies, moms. Like it's so important for all of us, especially as Black women, because we're always busy, right? We always, even as sorority women, we're both sorority women. We've always got something to do, right? And so I am super excited to have you on today to talk about it, talk about your experience. And then it's another good thing about Kishshana that she's had experience in consulting, experience in teaching on higher education. We were just talking about that before we hit record. She works with fundraisers. I'll never forget, I was doing a fundraiser like a summit. I was doing some emceeing a few years ago, and somewhere in there, Kishshana's name came up. Somebody was like, "Yeah, Kishshana Palmer," and then they were saying that, and not only were they saying it, but they were talking about another event where you were going to be speaking, and they were so excited, like, "I'm going to hear from Kishshana," and I'm like, "Oh, yeah, right?" And so, you know how people say, you speak your name in rooms you're not in? Kishshana was already in the room. I was the one lucky to be there.
Oh
And I
God,
mean,
making me blush. I still blush.
I don't know if I told you that story, but I
Yeah.
sure was new. And it was here in Jersey. Like it was more of a, it was like, I think it was NJIT. So it's more of a
Yeah.
local ed event that was
Yep.
happening.
Yep. Yep. Yep.
And so like, it's not that I was surprised, but I was pleasantly, pleasantly surprised that your name was not only being spoken, but like really glowing reviews
Oh,
all
I
over.
love that.
Again, I'm excited to have you on the show. Excited we're going to get into a lot of these things. So I know my intro was long, but tell us a little bit more about you.
Thank you so much. Listen, let's talk about me, okay? I'm just here, just to smile. So listen, I know you're a Jersey girl. I'm a Queens girl, so I'm a New Yorker, born and raised. And you know, like many of us who are from the East Coast, and then going one step out, many of us who are Caribbean, and then going one step out, many of us who are Gen Xers, many of us who have immigrant parents, or whose parents were working, right? Came into our education experience, into our first job experience. Mine was at 14. Into our collegiate experience, if you chose to go that pathway, or vocational experience, whatever pathway we chose, if you a lady of a certain age, you probably were doing all of the most. Many of us are intrinsically motivated because we just had to figure it out and we had to get stuff done. And the challenge in that is that on the one hand, it makes us incredibly successful by whatever standards we are measured. On the other hand, you are rewarded for this level of hyperactivity and performance-based, I would call it performance-based love, performance-based
Mm.
visibility, performance-based acceptance. And when you are rewarded for it, for those of us who are in the, educationally gifted and talented programs, for those of us who went to the after school situation, who did SEO, did a boarding school program, prep for prep, all the things, you are tracked into this like hyper speed of busyness. And you just look up and you don't know how to get off. And you were told that if you decided to rest, that you were lazy. Don't let your mom or your grandma or anybody in your family walk into a room and you sitting in a corner minding your business. They're like, what you doing and why you sitting still? You know?
Mhm.
Um, and so over the years, I decided
Over the years.
that something had to be different, but I couldn't figure out how or even like what. I knew that I was a single mom. and I'm raising this girl child, and she is seeing everything that I'm doing, and she's seeing everything I'm not doing. So on the one hand, I think I am modeling hard work, focus on what you gotta get done, handle your business, be a lady, carry yourself with upright character, have deep faith, all the things, right? Have good friends, be a girl's girl. Darn, that's a lot of cues we're getting.
It is.
And and I have an only child, okay? And so it's a wonder that baby was in her room like, "Leave me alone." Okay? Look how much I just said that I'm thinking I'm doing all these things, and then heap on top of that mom guilt, and then heap on top of that, oh my gosh, she and her dad and I are not together anymore, and so then I have this guilt about the things that I haven't been able to provide for my child, and the statistics and blah blah. All it does is accelerate your desire to be busy, because
Mhm.
if you slow down, you got to deal with your stuff. And what have we been known to say? We don't got time for that.
Yeah, but we make time, way too much time sometimes.
Hello? You make way too much time.
Yeah, and I love how you said, how you called it performative love. That
Mhm.
is so I think about, you talked about going out, going to school, going to do different things, but I think about, like, even, like, holidays. Holidays, when you get together with your family now, while you love get together with your family, I have amazing holidays with my family, I swear it's like a report card day.
Oh my gosh.
'Cause
It is
you're
report
gonna
card day.
come, we're gonna either gonna talk about what so and so is doing. Like, it's gonna be like everybody going around what they're doing, then you dig into what somebody else is doing, then you gotta come up with something that you're doing. And, like, when you think performative love, even if your family isn't judging you, you
Yep.
feel the need to show up and
Yep.
show up even more because now you gotta put something on. That is
Exactly.
so like, that just as you were just talking, that just all hit me. I'm like, "That is so deep and profound how much we kinda psychologically take ourselves through."
We do. And it shows up not just in our familial relationships, it shows up in our love relationships. It shows up in our community relationships, and so in that community wellness and your girlfriends and sorority sisters and your civic organization contemporaries and the conferences you go to, right? It shows up everywhere, and it
Mhm.
is so pervasive that it feels like a mist that's just, like, raising up from the ground, and you're like, "What the heck is going on here?" And then the mist is swallowing you, and you don't know where the mist came from, okay?
Yes, exactly. I
Oh,
completely understand. But I wanted so helping our guests get to know a little bit more about you too, and then,
yeah,
how it delves into this and how it inspired the book. What was that
absolutely.
moment when you say the mist coming up? I definitely get the visual. But what was that moment it came up that you said, I need to write about this?
Yeah, so I'm, oldest in family. I'm the oldest girl. I am a first generation American. I am first to go to college in my family's generation. I am first to own a business, period, among all my cousins and aunts. I think my grandmother might have been like literally the first, but she didn't tell me until like 5 years into me owning my own business. So that was not helpful. Um, and so there's a lot of firsts. And then in my career, I was, in the C-suite, probably my early 20s, at a time where that wasn't a thing. And I sat in the C-suite ever since. And so my sort of like rocket up to that executive level happened pretty fast. And I thought I was lucky. So we hear about first woman to do so and so, first black woman to do this, first to do that. On the inside, I felt real good about being the first. I did not realize, hey Kish, that is, although it's a great achievement, that is not the thing we want to put the flag on, because there is still more to do, and there are some other flags, yellow and red, that you need to be aware of when you are an only. And so the aha moment where the mist, I started to realize it was around my feet, was my third, fourth, fifth health scare. So for many of us, particularly for Black women, we push through, press through, get through all manner of things. And the thing that I believe that we have pushed through energy around the most is our health, for lots of reasons, systemic reasons. We don't have time. Um, Knowing the information is not going to change the day to day work we actually have to do. It and I started to believe like we're just made for more than work. And I had a really, really bad flare up in my spine. I couldn't walk for a week. My mom had to help me use the bathroom. Like, this is like a really serious situation. And I'm a grown woman. And shout out to Dawn for living down the street at the time. I don't know what I would have done, Akila, if I was here now in Atlanta and my mom was back in New York, right? And that would have happened to me. And I realized I cannot show my daughter this. This is not life. It
Mm.
just isn't. But I didn't start writing then. I started writing notes like in the margins of my day planner. And when I got approached by my publisher to write a book, I was actually going to write about something else. And my editor was like, "Hey, you write a lot about this need to take care of yourself, and you are really transparent about some of the challenges you've had with doing that. Would you be open to writing about that?" And I was like, "No, no, yes, yes."
I'm glad you said yes.
I wrote itself. It really did. Like, it just sort of spilled out of me, and I was told there were some definite moments where the shrooms were shrooming. And anyone who has navigated through any kind of mental health issues, and who is willing to open themselves up to more holistic ways to navigate that without being medicated, um, under the care of my physician, definitely have been able to find my way to how to give my brain space to be able to slow down enough to communicate what's necessary in order to be able to have a shot at being successful. So that's really what it was. It was physical pain, it was mental distress, and it was a burning desire to make sure that my daughter did not repeat the same type of behaviors that I had been conditioned and socialized to believe that's what success looked like.
I love that, and I love, our kids are always our greatest inspiration, and sometimes they are the catalyst, like, "Look, if you're not doing it for me, right now, doing it for them will help me too."
It
Um,
will.
so when you're thinking about and you're talking to women who are reading this book or listening to this episode and they need to make that move, hopefully before it physically starts to, manifest itself. But what do you tell someone who's like, "I need to start doing this. I need to start unlearning the busy syndrome that we've kind of been thought or taught?"
Yep. So what I will say is a couple things are going to happen in your body. The "I need to" starts to form like conviction, right? Like you are being convicted. So that means your heart rate is going to speed up. That means your cheeks are going to be flushed. That means that low hum of anxiety that many of us live with, but we do not want to talk about, is going to start to flare up. That is my invitation to you to pause. I didn't ask you to do all that. What I want you to be able to do is to imagine what life looks like if all lights were green. If the answer was yes, what would it look like for you to do less? And to start with that imagining. And for many of us, that means getting outside our office, getting outside your bedroom, getting outside of your house, putting on your sneakers and going to take a slow walk until the air that you are breathing starts to feel less like Glade and more like the trees and the bees and the leaves. Hello? And for a city girl like me, that's a lot for me to tell you I go outside and do some walking. But the reality is your ability to start to understand what your body needs means you have to come back into connection with your body. And for many, many, many of us, we have long practiced disassociative um, behaviors that we are disconnected from how we feel. And a quick example, Akila. So I released a lot of weight in 2022, partly in with help from surgery, and then diet, exercise, focus, lifestyle, and sleep. And it wasn't until I dropped my first 40 pounds, I lost about 65 pounds, that I've been able to keep off. And it wasn't until I dropped about the first 40 that I started to realize that I didn't know the difference between pain and discomfort
Mm.
because I was in pain all the time. So for women who want to say, "Kishshana, oh my gosh, I hear you. You're talking to me right now. What do I do next?" Pause. That's our first stop to slow downville. Pause. Let your body experience what it's experiencing. I want you to note it. I want you to write it down. I want you to keep track of that in your planner. So if you're a digital girl, you use a Notion, you use it, you know what I mean? Mondays, you use a Click, whatever you use to keep track of yourself, record that and keep track of that.
I
I
love
think that's
that, and
important.
when you said to the difference between pain and discomfort, I don't know if you saw my face, but I was like, "Whoa."
You're like, "Can I else?"
Exactly. I literally had that moment. So for those who listen to audio, go watch my face change.
You're like, "Oh."
This exact moment because and I don't know if I told you this before, but so I've had a hip replacement back when I was
Mhm. I remember that.
so long, long time ago. And now my other hip is starting to do its thing, but that's a whole nother story. But I say that, bring that up to say, even before I got the first hip replacement, I was in pain for years and did not realize. Like, I annually had started going to, which is how it even all came about because I was so young, no one ever really looked at my hip, right? And I had
Exactly.
annually started going to the doctor, and they were giving me physical therapy. I would do physical therapy for about 6 to 8 weeks, at least once or twice a year. I would feel better or be in discomfort, I guess, to what I was doing. I didn't realize. I thought it was feeling better. And then when the pain would come back, I would go back and, kind of did this for literally years until finally one of the doctors was like, let's do a full body scan. And he was like, oh, you've got hip dysplasia. I'm like, oh, thanks, guy.
Mhm.
Thanks for nobody else. And now that I'm kind of feeling, and I recognize the symptoms now because of
Mhm.
what I went through with that particular hip. But now that I'm feeling it, I'm like discomfort based, versus the pain kind of part. And I'm like, man, I need to sit with me a little bit more. So thank you. I was getting
Absolutely.
something new for myself on these episodes. But I
Yeah.
also wanted to segue into talking about your rethink method that you
Yeah.
talk about in the book. So starting to think within yourself and think about your body, what your body's going to. How does that tie into where does that go with the rethink method? Can you tell us a little bit about that?
So the rethink method for me is really about what works for you in your personal life will work for you in your work life. Because I believe that if you as a leader are living well within yourself, then you are able to more comfortably and more bravely model that for your team members, which means you will lead well. And so in the rethink method, for me, it's a matter of like, first you got to take a minute to pause. So that was thing one, right? You got to think before you act. Like slow up before you decide to go jump on keto, go get the semi-glutide, go get the surgery, go do the. Hold up. Why? And be able to take that opportunity to just pause. And I think that for many of us, we are so used to like just jumping into action, getting it done. We got to move. And if we don't do it, nobody else is going to do it. Leave all that energy. That energy is extra angry. And it is making our metabolic age real old. And,
Mhm.
I never used to be into all this stuff, okay? Like, I really decided a couple of years ago, I had a mentor who was like, I'm gonna pay for this class for you to go get the certification in wellness because I know that if you're certified, you will pay this forward. And I was like, wow, because this class at the time was like a million, billion, billion, bazillion dollars to me. When you're an entrepreneur, you got to make decisions
Yeah.
between pay for this marketing stuff, I'm gonna pay for this thing for here. So, one of the things that I really started to get into and understand is when you have an understanding of your body and of your mind and that connection, and you can make it real for yourself, you can then model that at work. So, a part of rethinking is I don't believe in work life balance. I don't think I ever have. I believe that for many of us, if you think about like your favorite amusement park ride, the one that I loved to watch but refused to get on after I was a kid was the pirate ride. You remember that one, Akila?
The
When you
boat.
just go up, ooh, that boat.
And
And when the
I've
boat,
never been on one because I'm afraid of
don't
heights.
get on it. Okay.
But I know it's
So
going
it's like your life is flashing before you. And so the thing about this pirate boat, right? So it starts with this low swing. And so you're kind of swinging in that middle and you feel a little rocky and you're like, ooh, my stomach's a little queasy. But then that thing starts to go up. And then there's one point where it hits that hang time on either end. And our life, a lot of times, is like that. And our businesses are like that. And if you are working within a business, our teams, our projects are like that. So that you swing up one way and stuff feels overwhelming. And then it kind of comes down. And you're like, woo, I'm coming down. I'm coming down. And then you're up again. and something in your personal life. You need to be a caretaker for a parent. Somebody has an illness. Somebody loses a job. You have to relocate and disrupt your children's current day-to-day existence and your own. So I really started to lean into work-life integration. If I get to acknowledge as a leader that what I do and how I am at home actually does impact how I behave and how I influences my team at work, then how do I think about change from that perspective? So that's bringing that humanness, that wholeness to the table. And Akila, a lot of young professionals will say things like, I just want to bring my whole self to work. And
Oh,
I
yeah.
say, no,
Let's talk about that. Yes.
no, no. First of all, Akila, you don't even like you all the way half the time. Why you want to inflict that on anybody else?
So true.
Right? Like, I don't need all of you. This is not a John Legend song. Okay. And I want us to think about
Mhm.
ourselves more like a kaleidoscope, which is beautiful, has 8 to 16 colors, depending on how big a kaleidoscope it is. And every time you turn that kaleidoscope and click it, you get a beautiful new image. So you get to decide who sees what click of your kaleidoscope.
I
That to me is
love
different than Imma bring my whole self. It doesn't mean you're inauthentic. And it's one of the things and how I actually actively applied my rethink method to stop code switching. Because when you code switch, that's about you responding and reacting to something else. You do not feel empowered, right? You feel like you have to be activated to assimilate. But when you kaleidoscope, you get to decide who gets to see what. Now you have agency. Now you have authority. Now you have dominion. And
mm.
to me, being able to think about things a little bit differently, release yourself from the conditioning that many of us have had is, I think, a really critical part of the rethink method. It allows you to be more inclusive. That's the I. And really bring voices to the table that will influence the way you make decisions as a leader, will impact the way you make decisions as a leader, and also will innovate on your ideas as a leader. So that's looking at inclusion a different way. Anyway, I'll pause there.
I love that. I definitely love the kaleidoscope piece, and it's funny because I just, recently responded to a TikTok. I'm a ranty rant person.
I know you were. I love it.
And so I wanna get your thought on this because it ties right into what you just said
Yeah,
about code switching and, how you bring yourself to work. Because I know it's something we always struggle with, and I'm just gonna say, we're the code switch generation. We
we
were
are.
literally taught not to be yourself. Like, when you
Yep.
go to work, you dress for the position you want, which I do believe in that. Well, I
I
also
do
like to
believe
dress
that
like a
too.
decent person, right? But you dress this way, you act it's like we were literally told this what you do when you go out the house. Like, so we had a church us, we had a school us, we had a home us, and we got a work us. So we were code switch generation. But this particular video, she said, she started out with something like, we need to stop having like a front or being a certain person on LinkedIn, that the button up LinkedIn persona was dead and that we need to start being our whole selves on LinkedIn. I am adamantly against this. That's a whole nother story.
Hey,
But I wanted to, as you were saying that, I was like, oh my God, this is what we need to talk about. Because for those, especially for those, women who are like their 20s, their 30s, or just kind of navigating some of the things that we've gotten through a little bit. What do you say to that? What do you say to people who say, like, oh, you could bring your whole self to LinkedIn or wherever you're going
absolutely
and you
not.
don't need the buttoned up you. Where do they
Uh,
get the buttoned up you?
no. First of all, I am not a buttoned up person, okay? Although, actually, that's not quite true. I was raised Seventh day Adventist, which is a Sabbath keeping denomination in Christianity and a pretty conservative church.
Mhm.
And so, we had to wear a certain type of clothing. We weren't allowed to wear jewelry. We didn't listen to certain types of music, all the things. And many of those traditions still live very deeply within me. So my idea of being risque is to have the top of my boobies out. Ooh, cleavage! And I think I have done it. Yes, I have arrived. Okay, that is sultry. It's not true. It's not true. That is so mundane. So what I would say to younger women particularly who ask me, well, how do you get to do this now? I have locks and, my nails and stuff. First of all, I've been getting my nails done since I was 14. Okay. So when acrylic could really kill you. And had been getting in trouble about my nails ever since. And I say trouble with quotation marks because in a professional environment, in a corporate environment, even in a more conservative nonprofit environment, when for me who raised money, when donors would look down at my hands and they would see color and lights and 3Ds and this and that, which are actual like representations of my inner world, my personality, like who my childlike wonder would show up on my nails. I would hide my hands or they would make comments. Oh, Kishshana, you're so colorful. Oh, Kishshana, you're just so. And I learned to say, oh, well, everybody needs a little color in their life. But what I had to learn to do was balance that out for myself. What do I get to keep that's uniquely me? And what can I temper so that people can pay attention to my mind
Mm.
and not my visuals? So the reality of the situation is perception is reality. And so if you show up and your authentic self is to be unwashed and unkempt, well, you should stay home. Because I for one, do not want to be in community with unwashed and unkempt. I can respect your unwashedness and unkemptedness, but I would like you to stay at the house by yourself
Mm.
or with the rest of the commune who also wants to be unwashed and unkempt. I'm just not interested. I can't take that seriously, right? Um, if you ever think about like when we see folks who are eccentric, regardless of how they define eccentricity, we always kind of look at them with a little bit of pity and wonder too, like, "Ooh, wow, I wonder what it'd be like to be like that." And also, "Oh, wow, I wonder how hard it is for them to do that." I don't want that. I want to take away from the bias and the friction that already exists in the natural human mind because what I've got to say is important. And I don't feel like I should have to jump up and down and scream and yell to get you to look past air quotes what my visual is. I want my handshake and my smile to match. And so I want younger professionals, particularly younger women, to think about when I show up as my best self, what does that mean to me? And let's be honest, Akila, a lot of younger professionals are not motivated by things that are happening on the inside. They are responding to external stimuli and they're responding to external praise, which is why if I'm not going to get promoted, I'm not going to work at this clip.
Oh, I
Even
just
if
read a post like that last week. She was like, "It's been 7 months and I haven't gotten promoted. I'm about to tell him I'm leaving." In the back of my mind, I'm like, "That makes 0 sense." But
I'm
okay.
looking off. I'm looking off. It makes 0 sense. But baby, you haven't even learned you still in your onboarding phase, sis. What, ma'am, sir, ma'am, babes, what are you doing? So,
Exactly.
like, there's an entitlement that's fueled by mediocrity, and I call it the mediocrity awards. And so, and that's us. That's our fault as parents, particularly for those of us who um, are in our sort of like older Gen X's, and we done child, we ruining the world. Let me just another topic. It's fine. Um, all of this being left at home and putting our keys around our neck has done something to our mental. I just want to say that for the record. So we have turned this around and been helicopter parents to these babies. We have congratulated them for breathing. And so it is not, I'm not surprised that I would want to ask about promotion in my job interview. What? You ain't get the job yet.
Mhm.
There is a way that you can ask about career tracking. Like I'm very unclear. So I think that there's some things that are missing. And so you, to me, cannot live with authenticity until you've had some time in your skin and in yourself. Right? Some iterations of that. So your professional authenticity does not show up in your first rev as a professional. It takes 7 years to grow new hair and skin.
It's true.
So what do you know about a darn thing in your first 7 years of working professionally? And I might get lambasted for that, and I don't care because I have a young professional that I am raising, and I will tell her the exact same thing. And she
Mm.
started work for me at 14. Her first job was as an operations assistant for her mama in her mother's company. So she has learned some things. And still, her professional and personal identity is still forming because her frontal lobe is not finished developing. Okay, a lot going about
And
that day.
and so I love that, and I love, but it's an important conversation. I'm so glad we kinda segued here, because, as we're thinking about being busy and how not to be busy, we also
Yep,
don't wanna say you don't jump to just not being busy, right?
you don't.
And not being busy doesn't mean do nothing.
Exactly.
Right, and we don't do everything, but also I think it's important that how people are looking, how people are perceiving, because all of this is, like you said, for external validation. As much as people say, "I don't care what people think," the fact that you posted it on social media
It means
means
you
you
care.
care what people think, right?
Care.
And let me tell you, for somebody like my husband's not on social, not. I've still been 13 years, I don't understand how he does it, but he is the definition, I don't care what people think. He's not on Instagram, like, he's got an account. He has no Facebook account, he has none of these things. I'm showing him videos all the time because that's what people don't care what people think,
Yeah.
looks like. The rest of
Yep.
us, we care.
We
We
care.
care. We're out here telling people about it, so we care.
Yep. We care.
Even if it's just enough for that. So I love having those conversations in those real world, and hopefully inspiring conversations for those, like I said, who are younger and just getting into this and kinda not necessarily made it part of their lives, but want it to be part of their lives. So I want to talk about, you talked about a little bit about, so we talked about the younger women, right? You talked about now women in leadership roles, right?
Yes.
And the pressure to always be available 24/7 is one of the questions that came up. I don't know if you know, but most people on the show by now know I use SEO Assist to get us some questions from what
Yeah.
we're asking. And so that pressure to be available 24/7, how can they redefine that part of success? Because even now as an entrepreneur, I feel like if someone messages me, I feel like they expect me to be sitting at my computer. If someone
Yes.
emails me or texts me or if there's a ping, I've now had to like really intentionally start turning off notifications and pings because they're always alerting me. And
Yes.
then my preparedness as a person is always to be there and answer and whatever. And then I get mad, like, why do people think I just live on my computer? Probably because I answer
Right.
like on my
Right.
computer.
Because you have trained them to
Yes.
operate that way.
Exactly. So how do you
Uh-huh.
talk to women, especially women in leadership, because we tend to get it a lot. How do you
Yep.
talk to us about and putting together the busy, not a four-letter word kind of methodologies and
Yep.
strategies with our need for 24/7 response?
So I think the first thing is many of us will stay on that 24/7 response because slowing down means we gotta deal with our own stuff. And we don't got time for breakdowns. Although actually we have breakdowns all the time. So one of the things I'll say is many of the women non-Black women that I coach, oftentimes I'll say that I can see a breakdown coming. I can
Mm,
see where the cracks are. For Black women, by and large, it is grand opening, grand closing. Where were the cracks? Where were the signs? Let me tell you where the signs were. In your overpacked schedule, in your attitude, the shortness, the sharpness. Think about it in our sorority meetings. I can always tell who is really stretched too thin or who does not have power in other areas of their life because of how they respond in moment to us. So we actually are showing our cracks. It just looks different. So for
mm,
women leaders, particularly more seasoned women leaders, thing one for me is time assessment, time audit. We do it at work. We do not do it for our personal lives. Track yourself 2 weeks on the clock, friends. 2 weeks. All you need. What did I do? When did I do it? How long did it take? 2 weeks. That's not even a Daniel's fast. Okay. And so doing it for that amount of time, the reason I want you to do that is because I bet that you do not have scheduled time with yourself. And everything feels like a thing you got to get to, as opposed to a joy you get to experience. So my first meeting of the day is with me and my man upstairs, right? And my woman upstairs, because I'm all into the duality. My
mm.
prayer time, my meditation and reset time, my workout time, okay? My coffee time, because Akila, I love me a good coffee, okay? I love
Listen,
Um, listen, hello, I love a good and I only drink 1 cup a day, but I love a good coffee. That time for me in the morning is on my calendar. It is my time. And I actually got that from my, stepmother, who I didn't realize it as a kid, but as an adult, I noticed that, she was getting up at 4:30 every day, and we didn't wake up till 6:15, so for what? And she said, "That's my time to pray. That's my time to have my cafe. That's my time to watch my novella that I didn't get to finish last night. before you jokers wake up.
Mm.
And I thought to myself, what a quiet but powerful prioritization of myself. So that's thing one. Thing two, you hit the nail on the head when it comes to the availability digitally. I don't have notifications on nothing. It's very terrible. I mean, to the point where my team is like, ma'am, like your cell phone doesn't have notifications. Like, yeah, I had to put my directive operations on VIP in my phone, like I have my child, just how things would get through. So I don't have WhatsApp, Messenger, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Blue Sky. It doesn't matter what. I don't have Slack. Nothing has a notification on it. And then I changed my out of office to be on all the time. So in my personal email, I have an out of office, and in my work email, I have an out of office. My personal email, it says, look, I've sent this at a time that works for me. You respond at a time that works for you. Because if it's urgent, I'm going to call you on the phone.
Mhm.
Okay. In my professional life, I have socialized to my team, to clients, and to colleagues. Y'all, if you really want to reach me, you better call me on the phone. Oh, you don't have my number? That means you don't need to reach me. Like, that's just it. Like, that is the gate. And there were 2 years, and I modeled this after a girlfriend of mine, Ify Ofer, who runs O4 uh, executive matchmaking for work. That's like, she's like the world's best recruiter ever. She doesn't have email on her phone, period. Because when she is at her desk and working is when she is checking email. And when she is not at her desk, she is not working. She's with her family. And so there is that. The end. And I panicked my first 6 months I did that. I panicked every day. Okay? Until I realized, wasn't nobody looking for me? No one. And then it was all ego. And so for many of us, this need to be needed shows up in our notifications. And it shows up in our responding in the group chats, even though we don't like half the people in these group chats we belong to. Right? Is responding because somebody told us that what we need to do, as opposed to learning how to leverage automation and leverage the technological tools we have available to us, like SEO Assist. Kishshana, I got to get on that. Blythe, I got to get on that. I'm talking to Blythe. She's going
I
to
got
right. Like using the tools that are available to us so that we can give ourselves that literal distance so that we can create more space and more spaciousness for ourselves. And 9 times out of the 10, after the first time you tell somebody I'm not available, and then you just pause and count to 10, if you're like me, I have to count because I always want to give an explanation. And they don't ask for it, and they just look at you and you look at them, and they look at you and you look at them. Let me tell you what you stop doing over time: explaining yourself.
I'm an over-explainer. I always gotta have a reason, and I've now started to, like, ask myself, "Do they even care why I can't or why I'm doing or why I was delayed?" Like, I literally would be like, "Sorry." Like, if somebody messaged me while we're on this interview, I would wind up the next like, responding to them later on saying, "Sorry, I was doing a podcast interview," right? Because I turn off everything for podcast
Yeah.
interviews,
Yeah.
and it
Same.
dawned on me, like, I don't need to tell them why it took me a few hours to get back to them. I could just
Oh,
take the hours to get back to them.
yeah. And say thank you for your patience. Like, I'm jumping in right now. And that's it. Thank you for your grace. Jumping back in.
That
You
is
know,
such
like,
an important lesson that I feel like with our generation and probably like right
yes.
before, right after us, both need to learn so much more. One of the other things I've seen people jokingly, but I know it to be true because I work with, folks in different generations, is that they say is like Gen X or Gen Y, they leave their silent on. Like, so when you go to text
Oh
them or
my gosh.
something,
My
you'll
kid.
get this
Generation.
person's in silent mode, like forever.
Forever. I had to tell that young person, ma'am, I pay your bill. So you turn those darn notifications on for your mama.
And they say, just for me, just for me.
And she was like, I mean, I guess. I'm looking at her little texting right now. Tanai has notifications silenced.
I see that a lot, and I'm like, I need to start. Then I have to remember that I put it in silent. I gotta remember to take it out of silent, but that's a whole nother story. But that's the one thing I can say that I admire from the
Mhm.
younger generations is that they're starting to get that. While I feel like I don't even think I'm learning. I think I'm losing the battle right now, but I'm working on
Well,
I'm
think
working
about
on
this.
the
They
battle.
have different, like, constraints, right? So on the one hand, I don't know too many of us in our generation and age range and work experience that are going to spend hours upon hours upon hours looking at 90-minute clips to the point where 90-second clips to the point where when we do, it's so funny that we post about it. We'll be like, yeah, I don't know how this happened to me, but today I was down this rabbit hole. It hardly ever happens to me. But did you know? Like, we want to share it because that never happens to us, right? So
Sure.
on the one hand, we are snap, 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 snap available for one-to-one communication, and they are not. But on the other hand, they are always snap, 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 snap available to be voyeurs in other people's lives and experiences.
Mm.
So they can disconnect from one-to-one interaction because they feel connected all the time. Where we actually are connected all the time. So we don't need to be a voyeur as a means of connection.
Into what's
Did you?
going on in other people's world.
There you go.
I love that reframe, and it actually segues into the last question I had, as we wrap it up. This has been so good. I feel like I wish we could do a part 2 or 3 of this.
Friends of
So
the show. Anytime.
yes, absolutely, friends of the show. So, what are some of the practical ways to reframe the ideas of doing less so that
Yes,
people don't feel like they're slacking or missing out? I know we talked earlier, you mentioned people being lazy or feeling lazy. What are some of the things, how we reframe that part of this whole scenario as
absolutely.
we move into this?
So for me, it comes down to my 5-star wellness plan. So as context, Gallup, and I'm a Clifton Strengths coach, came out with a study years ago about employee engagement and what it takes for employees to feel engaged at work. And there were 5 things. And so I adapted that and then modified it for my personal life because I believe that you learn the rules and you break them. And so there are 5 things. I consider this my 5-star wellness plan, 5 areas that I think in different seasons of your life require different emphasis. And you get to decide where you need to focus in this season of your life. So your physical wellness and well-being. That's literally your environment. So, like when we jump off today, I already texted my team, y'all, I'm be offline for a couple hours because the way this house is looking after these last 3 business trips, I'm ashamed. Because when my environment is crazy, I cannot work fast. I cannot think. I cannot innovate. I cannot play. So, your physical, your dwelling, and your vessel.
Mm.
So, in this season of your life, how are you thinking about your well being and your wellness physically, right? And then mentally. I believe that every single person, particularly working women and professionals, need to have a therapist on speed dial. Okay. Add your shaman to that, add whatever else, but you need to have somebody from whom you pay monthly to go talk to about whatever you need to talk to, just as maintenance. Okay. That's not even problem solving. That's not detection. That's not reframing, rethinking, reconditioning, just maintenance. And so, what are you doing and what do you need to pay attention to for your mental wellness and well being in this season of your life? And then your spiritual wellness and well being. So, I don't care if you believe in Jehovah Jireh. I don't care if you believe in Hare Krishna. I don't care if you believe in whatever, the bees, the trees, and the leaves. What outside of yourself is your anchor to come back to so that you are in connection with mind, body, and spirit? Then there's your financial wellness and well-being, which I think a lot of us look at with duress because our money stories are serious, okay? Our money traumas are serious, okay? Hello to this day, Akila, I will tell you, this is my confession. I still don't open the mail. If I show you this bucket I have of mail right here, because as a kid, we hit a financial skid when I was in middle school, and my mom would have me answer the phone and tell bill collectors that they weren't home. And so to this day, it is super hard for me to open the mail. Because I always assume it's gonna be a threat, right?
Mhm.
Okay, so how do you handle your financial wellness and well-being, taking care of yourself in this season of your life? For me right now, I'm getting married, I have a bonus baby, my child's in college, I'm an entrepreneur, I gotta make sure all of my term life, I'm at the age now where I gotta figure out what I'm doing with them next. I have to make sure you know what I mean? There's a lot of stuff that I need to focus on in this year, and I use shopping to self-soothe, right? And so that's because that's a byproduct of that period in my childhood where stuff was off the hook, right? And
Yeah.
so because I know this and because I have all those other inputs happening right now that are going to impact my financial wellness and well-being, I got to focus and making sure I'm well. And then the one that we overlook, or we kind of side eye, and that's a different podcast episode, okay? And I have a friend we come on and talk about this with, is our community wellness and well-being. we need to do a community well check. Who is in your life in this season of your life? Who's here? Who are your energy vampires? Who are the folks that are actually additive? Where are you an energy vampire? Are you
Mhm.
able to articulate how you were able to show up with your time and your energy and your proximity to your community of people at this time? And I think that if we're able to distill it down to those 5 points, you'll know. Now, if you tell me, Kishshana, I got to do all 5, baby, you need a sabbatical, a siesta, a lobotomy, and a reset. Okay. But for many of us, we got about 2 that we really know we got to lock in on. Like, come on now. And so being able to simplify that slow down means to be able to identify if I don't do anything else, I'm gonna focus on this 1 or 2 areas because I know if I do, those will knock over all the other dominoes and I will start to feel the release of needing to keep myself busy all the time. So that's how I would get started. That's how I would simplify it. And for folks who want to listen to me talk about this more, I have also sprinkled this in with the Golden Girls, A Different World, and Sex in the City, all in one book. And so it's an
Yeah.
opportunity to be able to really kind of dig in with humor, but also be able to apply these these tips and these sort of like tactics and overarching strategy for me in your everyday life with ease.
Which I love that, and it's funny because normally in our lightning round, which is what we're gonna get into next, we talked about the first one is what book do you run or live your business by? And I'm gonna say we need to be running and living our business and our lives by for busy is a 4-letter word. So
Yeah.
tell us a little bit, about, where they can get the book. I know it's on Amazon, any
Yep.
other places, what's going on with the book. And I know we talked about before the episode a little bit about your publishing journey. A lot of people do
Yes.
self-publishing these days. You've done traditional publishing, which is always a yay, kudos for making that happen. But tell us a little bit about that for those who are thinking about.
Sure. So first off, you can grab Busy as a Four-Letter Word, Guide to Achieving More by Doing Less, wherever you shop with your favorite independent bookseller. And you can go to KishshanaPalmer.com/book for a list of those. And I give you lots of freebies and get started nows. And I'm about to release a 5-part series on how to really activate on your 5-star wellness plan. So you'll have plenty of good stuff to get started. You can also download the audiobook if you're more of an auditory learner, um, and get all the freebies that way as well. So I think for me, the publishing journey was very head scratchy and eyebrow raising. Whether you decide to self publish or decide to go through a traditional publishing route, what you need to know is that you're going to have to do some work, friends. You need to have a budget to be able to market this book. You need to have a budget to how you are going to allocate your time. You need to add, just like you would do an event, add 30% extra for overage because it's going to take way more out of you than you think you need to. And you've got to be really damn clear about what you want out of the book. So, for example, for me, out of this book is not book sales. Oh, now we need the book sales now, okay? Because I can't get another book deal without these
Who's
numbers,
buying
y'all.
the book?
Just let you know. Right. But strategy wise, bulk sales is where I focus. So because I speak 30 plus times a year, every conference I speak at, most of the time they're going to be buying books. So we already came into this calendar year just about hitting that. We'll hit our bestseller, numbers goal before the year is out because I chose to go one to many and not one to one. Right. So I'm not peddling books at conferences because that's just not the way my back is set up. Remember that back pain situation? So I can't do that. So what I have to focus on is the purpose of this book is to level set for our generation specifically. So I wrote to myself, to my friends who are Gen Xers, who are in our 40s, who are in our early to mid 50s, who have kids, who are caretakers, who have pushed and pulled and kicked our way to the top of leadership. And we are like, enough is enough already. And then for my daughter, who is finding out that let me tell you something. All that glitter ain't gold. And that Gucci that your mama got you, your mama got it for you. Okay. And so for you to get it for yourself, girl, how are you going to set your life up to be able to do and experience the things you want to do? And so then is an extension for younger professionals. And so that publishing journey, I had to know that going into conversations with my editor and into conversations with the marketing team. Because if I didn't know what it is I really wanted, then I would be pulled by what I think they want. They want you to get your numbers. They want you to do visibility a certain way. They want you to do all the business to consumer marketing yourself. They handle the back end, right? And so when you self-publish, you're in control of a lot more, but you have to be even more clear on what is the purpose of this book, the purpose of this tome. So for me, it is 1 in a 6 box set that is coming that will
Mhm.
cover the arc of when I left undergrad. So when you're starting out in your career, all the way to succession planning when I want to put this darn pen down and go do something else. And that is an intention that I started similar to Star Wars. Star Wars was not the beginning of the story, right? They
Sure.
started in the middle. And so you got to be very clear about that, whether you self-publish or you traditionally publish, but also read them contracts. Because my publisher, for example, has first right of refusal for my next book. And if I didn't have a good experience with them, I'm still stuck with these fools. And so really thinking about your willingness and level of control over process, over timing, is one thing. For me, I didn't want to deal with printing presses. I didn't want to deal with distributors. I didn't have time for any of that running my business. And so I would not have chosen to go the independent publishing route, even with my learning curve with a traditional publisher. So I think really, really getting into why you want to do this thing. I think, and what do you plan to get out of it? And what do you plan to use it for? Like to what end? I think will help determine which route you want to go.
I absolutely love that, and thank you for that clarity. I did self-publishing, now I'm gonna say years ago, feels like so long ago,
I
but I
got
didn't have
your
all
book
some of those
is
things in place.
right there.
See, I did not have all of those things in place, and even now I'm thinking, "What do I want my second book?" Because I didn't think beyond, I was gonna put this course. I had a course, and I'm gonna put it into a book. That's where we
Yep,
started.
yep.
And I did not think about the second, and so now here I am, 6 years later officially from the first book, still thinking about, "What am I doing with the second?" Right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
What am I doing here? Because I think that thinking through the journey, thinking about how it's gonna fit the rest of your business or the where you wanna go next, all of that is so important, so thank you for sharing that part.
Sure.
The other thing we normally work I'm gonna kinda do a condensed lightning round as I always seem to do these days, but another question we always ask is, "What question didn't I ask you that I should have asked you?"
Oh, would I do this again?
Yes, would you do it again?
Yes. Yes, I would. I would write this book again. I would do it differently. I
You just
definitely
said, "What
wrote
would
my
you do
book in, like,
differently?"
40
The
days.
next one.
Listen, I had, like, 9 months to write it. Let me tell you what. About 8 weeks out, I was like, I need an extension." And then, shout out to my fiancé. I literally just locked in, and every night I was in the couch. He would just pass me food and drink.
Aw.
So it just poured out of me. What helped is I had a really dope outline.
Okay.
That really helped. Leverage AI, my friends. There are so many amazing tools to help you format your ideas properly, to help you make sure that your citations and your research is sound and on point. That saved me so much time that would have really stressed me out when it was time when my editor was like, "Yeah, so we need the citations for every single study." And I was like, "In 200 pages?" And so, being able to know and understand technology enough, I think was really helpful. And I think what else would I have done differently? I probably would have told more personal stories.
Okay.
I think my book, it hovers in the personal anecdotes, client anecdotes, and business and practical solutions. And I think that most leadership books kind of really skew all the way to just practical solutions. And I wanted to kind of get more to the novella portion of the program. And so if I had to do it again, I would have spent more time there and building that out.
I love the personal stories that I feel like they make things come to life. It makes things so I always remember a visual of, oh,
Mhm.
that story or that thing, or even if you say something it's like, "Oh, I remember that part." So you
Yep.
mentioned tools. Can you give us, like, the name of 1, maybe 2 that you
Oh
like?
yeah, of course, of course, of course. So I'm a big proponent and affiliate for Movable Type. Movable AI, it is a tool. It just came out last year. So when I was all the way at the end of my book and sending in my final edits when I first um, discovered it. So it helps nonfiction writers formulate their book proposal ideas, kind of get your thoughts together for your white papers. You got to have the ideas, friends. Okay, it ain't doing it for you. But it did help me on the back end go back and crystallize my persona. Who am I talking to? What do they look like? What do they smell like? What are they dreaming about? That was helpful. So when it was time for my developmental editor to give me feedback and to refine, that was when I discovered the tool. So the book was written. But I was able to leverage it to be able to kind of give me a little meat. So shout out to them. And I'll send you my affiliate code because you get a few.
Yeah, that's that's the next thing I'm gonna say. Give me the
Yeah,
link.
you
So
got a premium show. I'll make sure you have that. So that was thing one. Thing two, cannot say enough good things about Perplexity AI. One of the things I love about Perplexity, I ran every chapter I wrote through it. And because I started using Perplexity even before ChatGPT, that article came out, I think it was like October of 23. And it was like, whoa, new tool. I was like, been on it for 6 months, which is rare. Okay. But I have really worked to help establish a brand voice and to feed it articles, to feed it good data, right? Because there's a lot about bias in AI. And I believe in ethical AI practices and teach a lot about that. So what I love about Perplexity is that it sources the citations and it also names and lists all its sources.
Mhm.
So pictures, images, links, videos. I mean, you name it. So if you go into there right now and say, I would love to write an article about tying my shoelaces, and I would like it to be in the voice of KishshanaPalmer.com. Let me tell you what it's going to do on the side. Bring up all the things that it can find on me on the internet, and it links out to all of it. So when you have to cite it, you go directly to the site. Like that to me, gift, absolute gift. And I have tons of others, but those are the two I would say for the purpose of writing that I have found over the last couple of years, and particularly last year, to be really helpful in refining the thousands and thousands of words that I have put pen to paper over the years. That was a gift.
I love that, and thank you for those. Those are two I've well, Perplexity I've heard a lot about. I haven't used it a lot yet, but not about Movable either. So I love learning new tools to some of these questions as
I'm like,
well.
oh, a new tool.
Yes. So wrapping things up, again, I want to thank you so much for being here
Oh,
and sharing. And I know, I mean, this has been a gift for me. So I know someone else is like, I can't wait. This is amazing. Definitely, guys who are listening or watching, pick up the book, read. Don't just pick up the book. Let's say this. Read the book. I know so many times we get a book and like
yeah.
and there's some more books on my bookshelf I ain't read yet. But this
Hello.
one you need to actually read or listen to. I'm a big audiobook
Same.
fan myself. But thank you for coming on. Tell us once again where we can find the book
Sure.
and where we can find you.
Absolutely. KishshanaPalmer.com/book. That takes you to my website and it takes you to the book page itself. And then you can pick your favorite independent bookseller. If you were interested in having me host a conference, event, or be your keynote speaker and making sure that your audience has books signed by me and branded to you, then we also do that. And so reach out to me and my team will handle that. But our goal is to ensure that we help you lead a life you love, that you have a career or business that is of your dreams, and that you are healthy AF while doing that. And busy is a four-letter word. A guide to achieving more by doing less is a tool, a good tool, but a tool in helping you get to that life. And we want to be able to do that for you.
Thank you so much again for being on. Looking forward to it and looking forward to hearing all of my audience's reviews and
Yeah.
discussions about your book. You know, guys who are listening will be in the SEO Growth Mob Facebook group talking about the book and sharing our insights there. Talk to you later.
Talk to you later.